My name is Brajesh Jha. I run the media and entertainment vertical for Genpact, and I'm going to start with a story. Last month, my wife went to see her parents for a couple of weeks. I was like, yes, this is the time to binge watch on all the shows I never get to watch. And I ended up watching the entire Star Wars movie series, and I was just fascinated by the imagination of George Lucas. And for those of you who have watched all of it, there are two characters that remain present in every movie, R2D2 and 3PO. And these droids, or how I would like to categorize them, robotic assistants with AI, were simply amazing. And when we talk about the future of workforce, trust me, these droids truly bring to life what AI will do for us in very near future. So let me begin with the question, are we there yet? That is the key question. So we clearly have come a long way since when these characters were imagined. Technology has advanced significantly. Compute and storage resources have become a lot cheaper. Cloud has made it possible to host and run algorithms on large amounts of data. Likewise, process automation is a reality. And as we saw from the IPO of Automation Anywhere, the robotic process automation companies are thriving. And then what the pandemic has told us in the last 1 year is that it is possible to have a workforce that is made up of people working from anywhere. Those are the trends that form the core of my story today for you. So we will look at what it means for us. We will also look at what is the pandemic style working. And if we were to reimagine our workforce in terms of a globally distributed virtual workforce that is supplemented and augmented with the power of artificial intelligence, what are the building blocks? How do we make it possible? So we are going to talk about all of that in the session today. Okay, so let's start with pandemic style working. COVID-19 hit us out of nowhere, and we all adapted. Some of us moved entire teams and organizations to work remotely. It felt disruptive. And I will tell you, in the beginning, it felt like, oh my God, I travel 180,000 miles in a year. How am I supposed to conduct all my business meetings and lunches and dinners and establish those relationships? And somehow we adapted. And then it flipped. Everyone started saying, oh my God, are we ever going to need business offices? Are we ever going to require going to office? And is that even a requirement? And and then somewhere as the year passed by, and now that we are in 2021, there is a new reality that seems to have emerged. And everyone is trying to answer that question. So there's an analyst firm that we work closely with, HFS. They asked about 400 operations and IT leaders from around the world of Global 2000 organizations. And the question was, how do you plan to arrange your workforce after COVID? And you know what the response was? Only 37% plan to return to office-based working style. And the number was heavily influenced by EMEA and Asia Pacific regions where the interest level was much higher. And actually, as I speak, my colleagues in Australia seem to be going to office nowadays. And they call it a bizarre experience after not having gone to office for almost a year. But somehow it seems to be working out. And then about 51%, they said they will consider a mix of remote and hybrid workforce. And a significant chunk were committed to remote working, but they were going to evolve their operations to support a hybrid workforce in future. So where I'm going with this thought is it's not as slam dunk as it seemed last year when suddenly the world discovered that you could do a lot with Zoom, Google Meet, and Teams. So what we have learned in the process is that maybe we should look at the outcome of what people do when they are actually involved in their day-to-day work. Maybe we should look at culture. Is there a different one when people who come to office versus those who are stuck behind their Zoom screen? Are there things that we have learned about scaling up or down? As you can imagine, if you don't have to worry about the real estate and the logistics of setting up a center and things of that nature, if people just have to be hired at scale and they have to be deployed or at activities that they can do from home, the surge in demand is a lot easier to handle. And likewise, if the demand goes down, shifting resources to a different type of activity becomes also a lot easier. So that is another factor that has to be considered. And what about mentoring? Mentoring is quite different when you talk about doing it in person versus doing it virtually. And the last one is my favorite, reimagining the home office. Well, I'll tell you, my dog loves to come uninvited in meetings, and his point is, hey, you stop traveling, so and you hang around here all day long. So what am I supposed to do? You brought office to home, so I'm going to barge into your office. So these are all practical aspects that everyone has had to grapple with. Another management consulting firm, McKinsey, they spoke to us and they have come up with a new term, hybrid virtual continuum. I know it's a handful, but what it essentially means is that on the one end of the spectrum, you have people who have folks that plan to keep everyone in office forever. They're just waiting for everyone to get vaccinated, come to office, and life is good. Well, you remember Marissa Mayer's experiment at Yahoo back in 2013? Thou shalt come to office every day. Well, we all know how that experiment went. And on the other end, we have folks like Twitter that announced last year, everyone work from home forever. Don't bother. You don't need to worry about having to come back to office. So I think these are the two extremes, and this is the continuum that McKinsey is referring to. And if you look at the factors that determine where you would fall on that continuum, it's real estate costs, employee productivity, access to talent, employee experience, and what you also have to understand is what binds people together in office settings, discussing favorite topics over coffee or simply going for a walk after having had lunch in the office cafeteria. Those are corporate cultures that get formed when people come to office. And there is a parallel culture that gets developed when people are not coming to office. And then it sort of creates a divide between those that are in the camp of preferring to stay at home and enjoying the flexibility that comes with it versus people who are in office and enjoy the more gregarious side of their personality that comes to fore. So how do you pick your spot on this continuum? Our recommendation is to avoid the extremes. It is best to decide and understand each of the aspects of the work that people are doing. Think in terms of micro hubs where people could come to office maybe a few times a week and try to strike the balance between productivity versus pure outcome, accountability versus autonomy, change management versus cost benefits. So at Genpact, what we have ended up doing is we have created a digitally enabled virtual world of work where business models are agile, people fulfill their roles from anywhere at any time, and the organization in the process is becoming more resilient. So change management becomes a lot easier when change is the only logical option. And in our view, there's a window. And we believe this window of opportunity is until the end of 2021, when organizations will have to make a decision which route they're going to take and where are they going to fall into that continuum. And if you look at the various phases, we call it as adapt, which is fix your short-term problems, rise, which is build virtual operations, and thrive, which is lay the foundation for the future. So I'm going to share a quote by Tiger Tyagarajan, who is the CEO of Genpact. He says, organizations around the world are using automation to maximize the output of their most valuable assets, their people. And by automating previously time-consuming and largely manual tasks, employees can refocus on higher value work. Now, there's a lot in that statement. It talks about a dispersed geography. It talks about people and their way of working. It talks about the process. It talks about the power of AI as to what it can do for us. So on that topic, let's say if that is the vision that we are trying to go to, what are some of the building blocks? How can we actually make it possible? So the first one is about having an adaptive workforce. And At Genpact, we have about 100,000 employees, and they're in 25 different countries with 300 different skills. And what we have started is called Genome, which is essentially a program to reskill our entire workforce, no matter which geography they are in. And this is in collaboration with MIT. Our chief innovation officer is on the board of their Center for Collective Intelligence. And the two of them have actually designed this entire program. And it starts with, it has 4 phases. It starts with because, which is taking a sense of why is it important for people to upskill? Where are the gaps? What is it that they think they're good at? And where do they think they need to improve? What are some of the newer digital skills that they need to pick up? So that's the because phase. The next is the immerse phase, where people immerse in self-learning. So a lot of information, good, rich information, which is accessible virtually now without you having to go attend a physical classroom. It's all out there and it's all collected, and it's curated content which is made available to people. Then there is the transform aspect, where people actually get to engage with thought leaders in a respective domain in a one-on-one or one-to-many setting. And then finally, solidify, where people actually deploy things that they have learned through work assignments that are given to them, and they're able to apply that in their real life. So this entire method of assessing people, identifying the network that they need to rely upon, then making curated knowledge e-modules available to them, setting up those seminars through what we call as knowledge nodes. There are lots of terms that we have identified. There are knowledge managers, there are knowledge leaders, and things of that nature. But the whole idea is to generate the collective intelligence inside the organization and make it possible for people to learn through each other, and eventually keeping that virtuous cycle going, where someone gets good through learning, learns more through meeting people, and then eventually is someone who's ready to be deployed. And when the demand comes, you don't have to worry as an organization where the resources are going to come from. Because as I was saying before, you can now harness the power of people being in different geographies. But because of this collective knowledge building ecosystem, as we call our Genome, it becomes possible for people to scale up and deliver on a new assignment because they have just been groomed for that purpose. Now, don't tell me it reminds you of the droids that were in the Star Wars movies. So, having said that, the next part is artificial intelligence. Now, there are some building blocks here that everyone knows about, and I'm not going to spend too much time on that. But what you have to understand is that data is at the core of it. There are data foundations. There are prescriptive engines that have to be built. You have to run the experiments, and you have to redesign your processes. And finally, you have to keep an eye on the business outcomes that you're trying to drive. And if this entire flow works well, artificial intelligence can become a huge, huge supporter of that overall picture. So there are a few pieces of this puzzle when you're trying to get the most out of it: customer experience, workforce transformation that I talked about, having a target operating model where you know the location strategy of people, getting the data ecosystem right, having the technology to support it, and getting ready of all the technology debt that you've accumulated over the years. And that essentially leads to a learning enterprise where operational efficiency just comes naturally to you. Your experience for the customers becomes quite different. And then the leaders do not have to visit physical sites to see how well someone is performing. That becomes like an ancient approach. And the entire approach towards managing people and harnessing the power of what the organization brings to the table becomes a reality. I'll end you with one story I saw this morning on Wall Street Journal. Mark Benioff at Salesforce said that he's going to set up a ranch for all employees that are virtually located to come in and immerse in company's culture. Wouldn't that be fabulous? Can you imagine people visiting a Disney-style theme park, which is for the corporate culture? That is the future that we are going towards. With that, I want to thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to the rest of the sessions at HITS.